You can grow 100 pounds of potatoes in a space no bigger than a card table, a little over 4 square feet, a square you could set a chair on. And I'll be honest with you right from the start, the way my grandmother would have wanted, 100 pounds is what you get in a fine year once you've got some practice. Your first season, what you'll most likely pull is 40 to 60 pounds. But hold on to that number because even it is extraordinary. A long 30-foot row, the kind that breaks so many people's backs, tends to give you the same or less. That's no trick at all. It's just an old way of planting that almost nobody uses anymore. And here's the part nobody tells you. The reason your potatoes have always disappointed you was never your soil and never your lack of a green thumb. It's that you plant them lying down, sprawled sideways across the ground, the way the catalogs taught everybody. Before I show you the old way, tell me in the comments what part of the world you're watching from and leave your like so this old wisdom can reach more folks. And the reason the old way works is simple, and it's worth understanding before anything else. When you bury the stem of a potato plant, the buried part puts out side shoots, and the tip of each shoot swells and becomes a new potato. A garden row only lets you bury an inch or two, so you pull only a few potatoes per plant. But if you keep burying that stem as it climbs, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, every new buried stretch makes more shoots, and every shoot is one more potato. More buried stem, more potatoes. That's the whole secret, and it's why my grandmother always said a smart woman makes the ground work twice. In this video, I'll take you through every step. The kind of potato you absolutely have to use, how to build the tower, and the simplest version of all, straw only, that any beginner can put up in 20 minutes. Stay with me to the end because the mistake that ruins most people's harvest is right there in the first part. Now here's the step that makes or breaks the whole thing. And if you get this one wrong, nothing you do afterward will save it. You have to start with the right kind of potato. And this is exactly where I see good, careful people fail. They build a beautiful tower, they follow every step with care, they pull up 10 or 15 pounds and walk away thinking the method was nonsense. It wasn't the method, it was the potato. There are two kinds of potatoes, and they behave completely differently in a tower. The first kind sets all its potatoes in a single layer down low near the base of the plant. And no matter how much you bury the stem after that, it will not make a single potato more. You can raise a tower 6 feet tall and it'll give you the same little handful it would have given you in shallow ground. Most of the short season potatoes are this kind. The golden ones, the common reds, the ones a lot of folks grab first off the shelf. The second kind keeps right on making new potatoes along the stem as you bury it, and those are the ones you want and need to use. The names to look for are the russet types. Russet Burbank, German Butterball, Canela Russet, and the like. The ones that reward you when you build them up tall, because they set potatoes at every level, from the base to the top of the tower. So get yourself certified seed potatoes from a garden center or a seed supplier and ask for one of those names. Don't use grocery store potatoes to save a little money because it isn't a savings. The store ones are almost always treated with something to keep them from sprouting on the shelf. And that same treatment will fight you the whole way, leaving you with a thin, spotty stand and no notion why. Certified seed also buys you clean stock, free of the diseases that ride along in ordinary potatoes and sit in your soil for years. If you remember nothing else from all of this, remember this: the kind of potato decides everything. About 2 or 3 days before you plant, take your seed potatoes and cut them into chunks roughly the size of an egg, making sure every chunk has at least 2 eyes. Those little dimples the sprouts come from. A small seed potato, already about the size of an egg, you can leave whole. There's no rule that says you must cut it. On the bigger ones, look the potato over first and cut so the eyes are spread among the pieces, not all crowded onto one chunk and none on another. Then set the cut pieces out cut side up, in a single layer in a cool, shady spot and let those cut faces dry and skin over for those 2 or 3 days. Don't skip this. A fresh cut potato dropped straight into moist ground has a good chance of rotting before it ever sprouts, and you'll end up with gaps in your stand. Letting the cut callus over first is exactly what seals the piece against rot, and it's one of those small cares that separate a full harvest from one full of gaps. For one tower, you'll want about 4 to 5 pounds of seed potatoes already cut, which gives you enough pieces for 3 or 4 layers as you build. While they rest in the shade forming that protective skin, use the time to gather the materials for the tower, which is what we'll cover next. Think of those 2 or 3 days of waiting not as lost time, but as part of the work. It's nature closing every wound of the cut so that, when the piece meets the moist soil, it responds by sprouting strongly instead of softening and disappearing. Haste here is exactly what costs you dearly. Whoever respects that small interval starts the season with an even, firm stand, and that's how you build a tower that produces from the base to the top. Now we build the structure, and I'll give you the form that works best and is the easiest to come by. Take a piece of welded wire fencing, the kind with the rectangular openings, and cut a length of about 12.5 feet. Bend it into a circle a little under 4 feet across and fasten the two ends together with wire. That gives you a round cage that sits on about 4 square feet of ground. Set it on level dirt in the sunniest spot you have. And I mean full sun 6 to 8 hours a day, because potatoes won't give you a real harvest in the shade. With the cage standing, line the inside of the bottom foot or so with straw, pressing it firm against the wire all the way around, forming a kind of nest. That straw wall keeps your growing mix from escaping through the gaps in the fencing. A word about cutting that fencing. Since the ends come out sharp, wear a good pair of gloves and cut so you leave a few inches of the cross wires sticking out on one end, because those little prongs hook into the openings on the other end and hold the cylinder together nearly as well as wire ties do. Build it all on level ground too, because a tower built on a slope sheds all its water to the low side and dries unevenly, and you'll wonder why half of it does poorly. If your ground isn't flat, spend a few minutes with a spade and level it before you fill anything. And if you'd rather not mess with wire, the very same thing can be done in a 55-gallon drum with holes in the bottom and sides for drainage, in a big trash can holed the same way, or in a box made of pallets wired into a square. The shape doesn't matter one bit. What matters is that the walls go up at least 3 feet, that water drains out the bottom, and that there's room for 4 or 5 seed pieces in each layer. Here's where the growing begins. In the bottom of your tower, put down about 6 inches of a mix that's half compost and half straw, or if you prefer, equal parts compost, garden soil, and straw. The important thing is that it be loose, that it drain, and that it be rich. Set 4 or 5 of your seed potato pieces right on top of that mix, spaced out evenly with the eyes pointing up. Cover them with another 4 to 6 inches of the same mix and water until everything is evenly damp but not soaked. You don't want a swamp in there. That's your first layer, and the tower should be filled to about a foot. Now you wait. In a week or two, depending on the warmth of the ground, you'll see green shoots pushing up through the top. And this is exactly where ordinary gardening stops. And this method keeps going. In a row, you'd hill up once and leave the plant be, but here you're going to keep building. Every time the shoots grow about 8 to 10 inches above the top of the mix, you add another layer. Throw in another 4 to 6 inches of mix around the stems and bury all of it except the top 3 or 4 inches of leaves. You're covering most of the plant on purpose each time, because that's what tells the buried stem to put out a fresh round of side shoots, and every one of them is another potato starting. The plant climbs, you bury, it climbs, you bury. Do this 3 or 4 times over the season, and by the end, that tower will be standing its full 3 feet, packed with buried stem from the bottom to the top, with potatoes forming at every hand's width. Just one caution. Don't pack the mix down around the stems. Tumble it in loose and let it settle on its own, because the potato needs soft, airy ground to swell up properly. Now the watering, and I want you to pay close attention, because this is where more towers are lost than anywhere else. A tower dries out far faster than a garden row. In a row, the potato has all the earth around it holding the moisture in. In a tower, that mix is exposed to the air on every side through the wire, and the wind pulls the water right out of it. So you have to water deep and water steady. The rule I'd give you is this: push your finger about 3 inches into the mix, and if it's dry down there, water until you see it running out the straw at the bottom. In the heat of summer, that might mean watering every other day. In cool or rainy weather, twice a week is plenty, but keep it steady. A potato that dries out and then drowns over and over grows knobby, small, and split. A potato kept evenly damp grows smooth and full. For feeding, the compost in your mix already carries most of what the plants need. But if you want to push the harvest a little higher, you can side dress with a balanced organic fertilizer or pour on a little compost tea every 3 or 4 weeks while the plant is growing hard. Just don't get heavy-handed with the nitrogen, the stuff that greens up the leaves and makes them showy. Too much of it, and you'll grow a magnificent bush on top and next to nothing underneath. You want the plant putting its strength into potatoes, not into showing off. And let me name the mistakes that catch people most, so you can step around them. The wrong variety, which I've preached on plenty. Shade, because a potato is a full sun plant. Full stop. Letting the mix dry out, which is the big villain. Hilling too timidly, when you need to be bold and bury most of the plant each time. And starting too big, wanting 4 towers your very first spring. Build one, learn its watering, learn its rhythm, and your own ground through one honest season. Here's how you know when to stop hilling and when to dig. As soon as the plants flower, that's your sign the potatoes down below are well on their way, and that's when you stop adding layers. Let the plant pour everything it's got into fattening the potatoes instead of climbing higher. From flowering to harvest is usually another 4 to 6 weeks. And the way you know it's truly ready is when the vines start to yellow and die back on their own. Don't rush that part. Those last weeks are exactly what give the potatoes their final weight and toughen the skin. And a tough skin is what lets a potato keep all winter in the cellar instead of going soft before Christmas. Then comes the best part, the one to do with your grandchildren if you've got them near. If you built the wire tower, just undo the ties, unwrap the fencing, and let the whole column tumble over. And then you go through it with your hands like a treasure hunt because the potatoes are sitting at every level, top to bottom. And let me come back to that number because I promise to be honest about it from the start. The 100 pounds can come off a mature tower in a fine year, done by someone who's grown this way many seasons and has every part of it down. But your first year, count on 40 to 60 pounds from one little 4 square foot tower and let anything beyond that be a happy surprise. Finally, the simplest version I promised, for anyone who looked at the wire and thought it was too much work. It can be done with straw, alone. You lay 4 seed pieces right on the bare ground, in a little square about 2 feet across, and cover them with about 8 inches of loose straw. No soil, no compost, no structure. When the shoots come up about 8 inches, you throw another thick layer of straw on top, burying most of the green again, and you repeat that 3 more times over the season. At harvest, you just pull the pile apart, and there are your potatoes, clean and dry, with no digging at all. Before you go, tell me in the comments what part of the world you're watching from and which potato you chose. And leave your like so this old wisdom can take root again. In the end, all of this comes down to one plain thing. Buried stem makes more potatoes. The tower, the straw, all that work of hilling up. It was never anything but a way to give the plant more stem to bury. Grow the potatoes standing up instead of lying down, give it steady water, full sun, and the right kind of seed, and one single little square of your ground will feed your table all winter long. And maybe you wonder why almost nobody plants this way anymore, if the old women knew it plainly. The answer isn't that somebody hid it on purpose. It's that there was never any money in teaching you to harvest 100 pounds of potatoes off 4 square feet with a couple dollars of seed. The catalogs would rather sell you the easy, popular variety, the very one that quits at a single layer. And so this knowledge slipped out of one generation and didn't make it into the next. It's no conspiracy, it's just a system running along on its own, with no one at the wheel, and it nearly cost us something worth keeping. So if any of this changes the way you mean to plant this coming season, I truly want to know. Tell me down in the comments what part of the world you're watching from and which kind of potato you ended up choosing. Because I promise you, somebody reading is about to make the wrong variety mistake, and your word might save that person's whole tower. If this video taught you something you didn't know, leave your like. So this old wisdom can reach more folks, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Because next time, the good Lord willing, I'll show you how the old folks kept these potatoes firm and sweet clear through to spring, without a freezer and without a single thing plugged into the wall. Share this video with someone who also has a little patch of ground and the will to plant. Because growing the food is only the first half of the work. Keeping well what you've harvested is the other half, and that's where the real plenty lives. Try it this season and tell me how it goes. And remember, the people who built this world with their own hands knew things we are only now beginning to remember again.